Interesting Ibn Khaldun quotes that you shouldn't miss. Ibn Khaldun, famous as sociologist, philosopher, and historian. Born on May 27, 1332. Died on March 16, 1406. Born in Tunis, Tunisia. Died at age 73. Ibn Khaldun was a prominent Arab historian and historiographer who is considered a precursor to the modern disciplines of demography and sociology. He is best known for his book Muqaddimah, or Prolegomena, which influenced Ottoman historians, such as Mustafa Naima, and Katip Celebi, who used his theory to examine the progress and failures of the Ottoman Empire. Here are some of Ibn Khaldun's famous, popular, and motivating quotes and sayings. Geometry enlightens the intellect and sets one's mind right. Man is essentially ignorant and becomes learned through acquiring knowledge. The past resembles the future more than one drop of water resembles another. At the beginning of a dynasty, taxation yields a large revenue from small assessments. At the end of the dynasty, taxation yields a small revenue from large assessments. People are largely ignorant of the interests of the human species. Businesses owned by responsible and organized merchants shall eventually surpass those owned by wealthy rulers. The Berbers belong to a powerful, formidable, and numerous people, a true people like so many others the world has seen, like the Arabs, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. All the sciences came to exist in Arabic. The systematic works on them were written in Arabic writing. All the sciences came to exist in Arabic. The systematic works on them were written in Arabic writing. Sedentary culture is the goal of civilization. It means the end of its lifespan, and brings about its corruption. Habits are qualities of the soul. Throughout history, many nations have suffered a physical defeat, but that has never marked the end of a nation. But, when a nation has become the victim of a psychological defeat, then that marks the end of a nation. Beyond known peoples of Black West Africa, to the south there is no civilization in the proper sense. There are only humans who are closer to dumb animals than to rational beings. They live in thickets and caves, and eat herbs and unprepared grain. They frequently eat each other. They cannot be considered human beings. The term of life of a dynasty does not normally exceed 3 generations. For in the first generation are still preserved the characteristic features of rough, uncivilized rural life, such as hard conditions of life, courage, ferocity, and partnership in authority. Therefore the strength of the Asabiyya is maintained. Government is an institution which prevents injustice, other than such as it commits itself. The easiest method of acquiring the habit of scholarship is through acquiring the ability to express oneself clearly in discussing and disputing scholarly problems. This is what clarifies their import and makes them understandable. Some students spend most of their lives attending scholarly sessions. Still, one finds them silent. They do not talk and do not discuss matters more than is necessary. They are concerned with memorizing. Thus, they do not obtain much of a habit in the practice of scholarship and scholarly instruction. If the soul is impartial in receiving information, it devotes to that information the share of critical investigation the information deserves, and its truth or untruth thus becomes clear. However, if the soul is infected with partisanship for a particular opinion or sect, it accepts without a moment's hesitation the information that is agreeable to it. Prejudice and partisanship obscure the critical faculty and preclude critical investigation. The results is that falsehoods are accepted and transmitted. Geometry enlightens the intellect and sets one's mind right. All of its proofs are very clear and orderly. It is hardly possible for errors to enter into geometrical reasoning, because it is well arranged and orderly. Thus, the mind that constantly applies itself to geometry is not likely to fall into error. In this convenient way, the person who knows geometry acquires intelligence. When incentive to acquire and obtain property is gone, people no longer make efforts to acquire any. Those who infringe upon property rights commit an injustice. If this occurs repeatedly, all incentives to cultural enterprise are destroyed, and they cease utterly to make an effort. This leads to destruction and ruin of civilization. The sciences of only one nation, the Greeks, have come down to us because they were translated through Al-Mamun's efforts. He was successful in this direction because he had many translators at his disposal, and spent much money in this connection. Eventually, Aristotle appeared among the Greeks. He improved the methods of logic, and systematized its problems and details. He assigned to logic its proper place as the first philosophical discipline, and the introduction to philosophy. Therefore he is called the first teacher.